Yeah, born in Inverness, but we yeah, because my dad's English, mum's Australian.
Right.
But he was working he's a journalist, so he was working for BBC Radio Scotland at the time. He was posted up there.
Yeah.
And yeah, and my brother and I were born, within about a year of each other. And mum was like, I can't raise two young boys in the Highlands. It was more than anything, it's the darkness. She's like, the winters are just unbearable with two little kids inside. So, and she's got it. So we came back to Australia, and I grew up in like regional New South Wales. And we moved around quite a bit. And then I ended up in Sydney at drama school. And then when I graduated, I moved back to the UK. So I lived in Manchester for a while. I was in Whalley Range, but I mostly toured around the UK. So I usually use London as a base, and I would be auditioning for things, and then I'd get the job, and then I'd go away touring for a while, come back, what is the next thing, go away. So that was my life for about 10 years before I became a clown. Yeah, so I came back and started doing like Adelaide and Perth Fringe, Melbourne Comedy Festival in about 2018, but I was still technically based in the UK. I did that for a few years in a row, did the Australian festivals, UK festivals, and then I ended up actually in then the director who directed Garry Starr Performs Everything was commissioned to direct this brand new Vegas show, which was going to open at the Venetian. And so we created this show, opened at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and then I moved to Las Vegas. So I was in Vegas up until the pandemic hit.
Wow.
And then it was after that I went, all right, I'm going back to Australia. So I'm living in Melbourne now. Yeah, I mean, look, aside from the fact that it's been a lockdown for a lot of the time, I'm really happy here. I think Melbourne's a great city. And actually for me, it was nice to have a forced break. So this 18 months or whatever, because when you're a freelancer, I just can't sit still for very long. And if you're not working and touring, then you sort of feel guilty. But for the first time ever, I was kind of able to get some money from the government and just relax and just kind of like take some time off. And now back on the road again, really. So yeah, I think, look, I always thought I wanted to be a sportsman because my older brother was really good at sport, like good at everything, soccer and cricket and everything. So I was always kind of like, trying to follow in his shoes, but there was always very much a performer to me. But I would do the school plays and I would get the lead in the school play, but I was always more interested in like just running around. And, we grew up in the bush. And so I was always just out building cubby houses. So I never really thought of myself as theatrical. I was just very, very outgoing. And then once I got, even when I finished, I think I took drama in high school, but then kind of stopped doing it in the final year. And it wasn't until I'd finished year 12 and was just kind of bumming around for a year that I met this guy who was opening an acting school in Canberra. And he said to me, you should come and do some classes. And within like a couple of classes, he said, look, I think you should really consider this as a career. This is something that's obviously quite natural to you. So he sort of pushed me to go and audition for all the big drama schools in Australia. And I got into the Actor Centre in Sydney and moved up, and it just like a duck to water. I just loved that two and a half years there. I just lapped it up and had a great time. And then I knew from that point on, this is what I wanted to do. So moved to London and hit the stage. Yeah, it was like that was kind of the Sydney. So they had The Secret Life of Us, which was this massive hit, was set in Melbourne, and then a whole bunch of those actors, like Claudia Carvin and Sam Worthington and anyone you can think of was in this new Sydney show, Love My Way. And Dan Wiley. So Dan Wiley was the one I did all my scenes with. It was like one of my first TV auditions out of drama school, and it was in Mulliners, so like the biggest casting director in Australia. And I just walked in and just kind of nailed it, and got this role. And I was like, all of a sudden on, in Australian TV. But that made me realize that's not what I wanted to do. So I did it, and the actual realization was the fact that the work itself wasn't massively satisfying because you don't get to like tell an entire story, but B, the fact that everyone in my life was so excited for me that it made me want to chase that. And then I went, wait a minute, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because everyone else is excited, but that's not what it's about. It's about loving the work, not the accolade. And so I thought the only way I'm going to be able to do fringe theatre, which is what I really knew, that cutting my teeth on fringe theatre would be how I learned my craft, was to go to another part of the world. I mean, in the fewest words possible, I think clowning is just simple, beautiful idiocy. That's what I call it. And it's not about, and the reason I put beautiful in there as well is because it doesn't have to be idiotic, like ridiculous, but there's something really beautiful about clown performers who are just completely open and vulnerable. And I think more than anything, it's about finding what it is about you personally that is ridiculous. Because I think the problem with makeup is that you're putting layers on and you're presenting something. Whereas actually, if you've trained with someone like Philippe Gaulier, you'll realize that it's more about stripping everything away and going, what is it about me that actually there's a clown called Mick Barnfather in the UK. Yep. And he says, your clown is very likely what people say about you when you leave the room. Yeah, I've only scripted it really so as a kind of a way to remember what I've said, or quite often it's for like the technicians who want a script. Even and then you go to a theater and they're like, "Oh, can we have the script?" I'm like, "Oh, a script." So I wrote a script mostly for other people. But the way I developed this show was I just started doing bits and pieces I was living in Berlin, so I was doing this sort of a cabaret circuit, just doing little short numbers, and then I had about probably 60% of a 1 hour show. So I took that to Cal McChrystal, my director, and I said, "Look, this is what I've got. What do you think? Can we make a show out of this?" And at that time, I was trying to do all of art. So I was trying to perform all art. And he said, "This is great." He said, "Let's narrow it down and let's make it theatre. Let's try and do every genre of theatre." And so some of the things we adapted to make them about theatre, and some of them we would find new ones. And we're like, "Okay, what are all the genres of there? What are all the performing arts like that we can do?" Because I was doing like contemporary art and things like that to begin with. And then we just pieced them together. And what Cal is really good at is looking at the structure of a show and going, "Okay, well, we need something here. Maybe this is like something kind of cathartic. I don't know. Maybe there's something here that needs to be like this." And then I'd go away and I'd create something that had that feeling, and I'd come back and I'd present it to him and the director, and we'd have a good laugh, and then he'd go, "That's good. Tweak this." So by the end, we built the show together, and then I wrote the writing. The writing actually comes into the bits that I'll say in between the scenes, maybe. And so my script doesn't really detail what I'm going to do but it does quite often have what I'm going to say. And that was a lot of trial and error. I got to the point where I would literally be trimming words, swapping words, and going, "What's the quickest, funniest, best way to get this across?" And yeah, so actually in the end, there was quite a bit of writing, but the writing was something I'd done once the show had been touring for done like 50 shows, and then I wrote it. Yeah, so when I create the show, I don't know how the audience are going to respond, because a lot of the time I'm like, I'm going to say, I need someone to come up and play this, and I don't know how the audience are going to react, and you do it a few times and you get surprises, but then the more you do it, you realize there's only a handful of ways that people tend to respond, and so then I know that's when I can get the show pretty set. But every now and then someone will throw a curveball at you, and someone will get up and do something, and you're like, I did not see that coming. And you roll with it, you run with it. And I honestly think some of the best things in the show have come by complete surprise. An audience member has done something. I'm like, wow, that was unexpected. And it's like, how can I try and get that to repeat? And so then it's like, well, if I drop in this, or if I say this in this way, then they're more likely to behave in that way. But it is, the show is pretty tight now. I mean, they've been doing it for a long time. But there's still room for, that's why I've deliberately made it like 50, 55 minutes, because I don't want it to go over an hour. But if an audience member throws a curveball at you, you've just got to run with it. And the audience feel that. The audience sense that something is happening that has never happened before. Like in Albury, I did this, there's this bit where I have spaghetti and I get two audience members to come up. We do Lady in the Tramp. It's like, romantic comedy. And I just kind of hold the spaghetti there and wait for two people to stand up and come and take the spaghetti in their mouth. And it always works. Eventually, the longest I ever waited was 8 minutes at the Adelaide Fringe, and I just stood there. People were like, "This, what's going on?" And then eventually, usually people got on quite quick. Anyway, in Albury, so I'm standing there and I can see this commotion. And then I look over, and the two people who are coming over, one of them has a guide dog, and the other woman is obviously like her carer or her friend, and was explaining to her what she's about to do. So literally whispering to this woman who's blind, oh, we're walking up onto the stage. You're going to take spaghetti in your mouth and you're going to be kissing the performer. And the woman's going, oh, okay, cool, great. So anyway, these two people have come up and they're stood there, and I'm like, and the audience are just loving this. Anyway, so we have like a three-way make out with me and this blind woman and her carer, and the audience are in hysterics. And I thought, well, this is great. I mean, they usually laugh quite a lot, but the laughter was more than we were expecting. We were like, no, something else is happening here. And what we didn't realize was that the guide dog had found the bowl of spaghetti. The guide dog was chowing into the spaghetti. So that's what the audience were losing their shit at. They were like, oh my gosh. And so when we realized that, it was just so funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, the one thing I would say is that the similarities between Garry and myself are really evident compared to, say, like when Tom Hardy's playing Venom. It's not. I think of him less as a character and more just of heightened version of myself. He's When my mum saw the show, she was like, "Well, this is just you as a child, and even the mannerisms and things that I did." She was like, "This is just exactly how you were as a child." Like if someone laughs, you look at them and then you just do it again. You just do what you did again, and you just repeat it. And that's the thing that we do as a child, but we're told not to do that as an adult because that's showing off. Like if you were the kind of person at a barbecue who just was like entertaining someone, like, what is wrong with this idiot? So there is a huge similarity between me and Garry, and I like to think that he's higher status than me, but lower intelligence than me. But maybe other people would disagree. Well, I think he couldn't play Bond because I kind of think Garry is like asexual, and so I think that you couldn't have a Bond. I don't know, maybe you could have a Bond, but it's so much about there's so much sexuality in a James Bond film, and Garry, like, because I in the show I kiss men, I mostly kiss men in the audience because I noticed very quickly that if I'm doing the spaghetti number and I kiss particularly younger women, the audience don't like it. But if you kiss like an old bearded man who's balding, the audience just love it. And so now I've now kissed far more men than I have women in my life. But Garry doesn't think of it in that way. It's like, oh, if I do this, the audience love me. I'll do this again. There's very little there's nothing sexual about him. And actually it's funny. I think that's why I can get so naked, is because there's nothing sexual about him. He's this kind of like weird being. And so like when I do get naked or, even get semi-naked and people are like, laughing or cheering, he mistakes it for like appreciation. So he's like, oh, so he'll just, repeat things again, but it's all to do with what the audience want. Oh, they like me when I do this. I'll do this again, or I'll do this more. So I definitely don't think he could be a Bond. I mean, in reality, he could definitely play. I could put Garry into a load of Shakespeare plays as the porter in Macbeth. He could be, he could play any of the clown roles. He could be the gravedigger in Hamlet. I think he could definitely put Garry in any of those roles. I've actually started writing a TV series, like a Garry Starr Performs Everything series, and in the series, he starts every episode in an everyday job. Like he starts to begin with, he's packing the shelves at a pharmacy, and still with the Elizabethan rough collar. And he's got an imaginary friend with him who he kind of talks to about all his high hopes. And but he accidentally kills someone in every job that he does. So you don't see it, but like you just see him accidentally putting the bleach in the mouthwash section, and then cut to him off doing ballet. And then you might see on the background in the news is like person dies from drinking bleach. And the next episode, he doesn't work at the pharmacy anymore. He just so happens to be a skydiving instructor. So it's like I think any job he did, he would do terribly. He would be absolutely terrible. But it wouldn't bother him. Like he would be unaware of the fact that he was useless at everything because he thinks he can do anything. Potentially, yeah. At the moment, I've still only got really the one successful show, which is Performs Everything. But next year I start touring Garry Starr Grease Lightning, which is my new show. And I think if you can back it up with another show, that's when you start to have those conversations. That's when people go, oh, okay, this guy, he had a really successful first show, but let's see what else he can do. So if this next one does well, then I feel like, I mean, I've already got people in the UK, sort of like, production companies who I've had conversations with, and in the US as well. But they're all just those initial conversations where they're like, oh, okay, almost like we're putting dibs on you. Okay, here we are. We know you exist. We exist. So I think if I can follow it up this year, then maybe I can start to pitch this series to production companies. Look, at the moment, I'm just really, really excited about touring a new show. I think this new show, Grease Lightning, where I'm going to perform all of Greek mythology in an hour, is it's my primary focus at the moment. And then at the same time, to be anywhere that I haven't been with Performs Everything, I'll take that. So, like, for example, I haven't done Sydney with Garry Starr Performs Everything. I still haven't done New York. So I'm going to, everywhere that I haven't been, I will take Garry Starr Performs Everything. And then anywhere I have been, I'll bring up Grease Lightning and then return the following year with that. So for me, my ambition is just kind of build my touring network, and at the same time, start laying the groundwork for creating some TV or film thing. But I don't know. I think it's interesting that you mentioned Ali G and Borat, because that's the kind of direction I want to go. And a little bit like Chris Lilly, I know he's sort of fallen out of favor at the moment, but I like that when you watch his stuff, you don't quite know who is aware. Like, it kind of feels like these people are not quite aware of what they're seeing. And that's what I love about Borat. I think clowns work really well when you are seeing the clown through the audience's eyes. And in Borat's case, that is the unsuspecting public. They are the audience for this. They don't know. But the reason he's so funny is that you see him through their eyes. You go, oh my goodness, this is ridiculous. These people believe that this is real. And for me, that is and that's why a red nose and makeup doesn't work for me, because if there's not a little part of you that believes that this person is as stupid as they're portraying, then they're not really a clown. They're a clown character in my mind. And a clown character is what we talk about with clown doctors and everything is that, because we accept it. We go, oh, this is a clown. Okay, great. Whereas with Borat, if you were to meet him, as we see, people go, wow, this guy is really, really naive. He's really an idiot. And that's what I'm interested in. I reckon there's probably 3 shows. Like, I reckon he's probably a trilogy. I've got Performs Everything, and I did the one called Conquers Troy, which has become Grease Lightning, really. So it's the Greek mythology one. And they're 4 years apart. So really you've got Performs Everything in 2018, Grease Lightning to 2022, and so then maybe there's one more. I think I'll always keep playing him because he's such a fun one. It's my clown, really, but I don't know if I want to get stuck in doing the shows forever. But who knows? I mean, if I'm enjoying doing it, I'll keep doing it. It's always been my thing. If I love what I'm doing, then I'll just keep doing it, as long as it's challenging me enough. Anyway. The best reason to come and see Garry Starr Performs Everything is that it is absolute escapism. There's a rolling laughter in this where because it's so childlike, it's so relatable. We can all relate to someone who's a little bit above their station, but thinks, but is obviously not very intelligent, thinking they can do anything. And it just rolls and rolls and rolls. And I think a lot of people say that they just laugh for the entire hour. And I really try and avoid anything that's political or controversial, because I don't want people to be taken out of it. And I think with pretty much every type of comedy, there's a bit where you go, well, I don't know if I agree with that, or, oh, they're poking fun at something that that means something to me. Whereas I really try and avoid that. It's just pure unadulterated joy. And I hope that that's what people will get out of this, that more often than not, people, because I always stand at the door on the way out to say thanks to everyone. And the thing that happens more than anything is that people say, oh, that was awesome. I'm going to bring my mum and come back again. And then sure enough, like if I'm doing a season there, like 2 days later or the next day, that person on the way out is like, hey, look, I brought my mum, I gave this. And it happens so often. So it's really, it crosses the demographics, it crosses age and, political, beliefs and language too. I've had Spanish people who don't speak any English, just absolutely love the show. I'm really looking forward to coming back to Mandurah and yeah, playing again. This show, I just love doing this show. People have said to me, "Wow, you've been doing it since 2018. Are you ready to do something else?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I am. I love doing new material, but this show is just so much fun to do."